One key aspect that can perhaps drive change in cities is the political economy of decentralization, right?
Hello, and welcome to the U20 Dialogue series. I'm your host Punit Gandhi from NIUA, and we are excited to bring to you a series of discussions on various urban development challenges faced by cities across the world and its potential solutions. This month, we will talk to experts working in the urban sector on the theme of catalyzing digital urban futures in cities. We had a super interesting conversation with Vachana and Vivek in our last episode.
If you look at the 15th Finance Commission report that just came out, there is mention of something called a municipal shared services and a data center, for which I think the 15th FC has parked some money. That is their effort to sort of encourage states to figure out how to solve the staffing issue via media. Obviously, you can't get around the fact that you need this big change. But what is the via media? There are some encouraging signs happening in India around that. So
Hope you enjoy the second part of the episode.
Okay. So coming, and again, the next question then comes, and next point that always comes is that if government can't do it, who else? Like people always think that government coffers are always full, and we have enough money, and we have everything that can be done is possible. If you don't have resources, who has? While when we look at least the urban sector of it, that is not
hmm.
always true. We are urban. Any ULB is hardly making money. There is, you can maybe count on fingers how many are in profit. So that is something is still not figured out and still not panned out. How can we change, or how can that ecosystem be nurtured in a way that there is more independence on those lines for cities?
Hmm. Okay. So no, again, that's a very wide question, the subject of people's lifestyles. Let me put it this way. But we've at Janagra, because cities is what we do. We live and breathe cities, urban governance. So we've tried to put in some construct. Let me try and spell that out a little bit here. So when somebody talks about the financial independence of cities, and I'm guessing that's where you're coming from primarily.
Yes. Yes.
One is obviously the fact of money and its management, where it's coming from, when it's coming, how's it being moved around within the system, how efficiently is it being spent and accounted for, all of that. There is another part which is I think Vachana can come to that later, which is while money is coming into the space and flowing around, helping deliver quality of life in whichever ways, who is holding it all together?
Yeah.
That aspect is equally important. So I think we have to see these two aspects together. It's not just the fact that money is there, it's the fact that there are 10 different people spending money according to their own agendas,
Yeah.
which are far removed from what the city government's aspirations are.
Yeah.
Right? Because of the jurisdictional issues. There's a parastatal, there's a state government, there's a central government, there's a local government.
Yeah.
Everybody has budgets, everybody has projects. All of it presumably addresses quality of life in so many ways.
Yeah.
But one is driven by someone, one is driven by someone. Is there something holding it all together? That doesn't exist, right? So that point is probably something Vachana can come in and talk about later. But purely on the money part, right? When we say financial independence of a city, it consists of what grants, etc., that you get, right? Which is what is the money that is coming from you from the Central Finance Commission grants? What is it?
Yeah.
What is coming from you, the State Finance Commission grants? What is coming from the state missions and schemes? What is coming from the central missions and schemes? How much money are you generating on your own?
Hmm.
Which is another part. And then finally, are you borrowing if you have any, projections of deficit
Yeah.
in the works that you want to do? So I should have probably numbered that. Would have been better for your audience, but maybe for another conversation specifically on finance. But yeah, so these are all the sources, right? So independence means that you have to make sure all these lines are healthy.
Yeah.
So I guess quite a lot of times we stress on the fact that cities need to make a profit, which is money on their own, right?
Yeah.
Let's call them own revenues, which is, does the city generate the money on their own by whatever direct services it provides? That is
Yeah.
one part. And across the world, there are barely any governments that are able to make enough money on their own, right? I mean, you have to rely on state and central transfers. Now, the
Yeah.
challenge on the state and central transfer part is that, is it predictable?
Hmm.
Right? Predictable. And is it sort of meeting your predictions more often than not? For instance, if you're trying to plan a 5-year project which costs 7,000 crores, If you don't have predictability of transfers and certainty of transfers of the amount within a range, as well as the duration of when you are going to get it, right? It's
yeah,
very difficult for you to plan your own cash, your own outlays, and therefore, can you even as a city plan a 7,000 crore project,
yeah,
which could benefit the citizens, right? So there is this component of state grants are okay, central grants are okay, as long as they are predictable, calculable, and there's a timely dispersal amount. Then obviously the healthiness of your own revenues, which largely on India states comes from the property tax system plus some user fee and charges. So there is property taxation on which I would say we're not that great. We have one of the
yeah,
lowest ratios across the world of the value of taxation to the GDP. That's quite low, but there's a lot happening there. So I don't think that is a negative. The pretty much all cities are moving in a very good way there.
yeah,
So I'm saying, yeah, I guess I would like to round it off and stop there by saying that we need to look at financial health and sustainability of a city, not just from the point of saying that we need to make money on our own and turn a
yeah,
profit, but we need to make the best use of whatever is a right to the city. Because
yeah,
ultimately, I live, let's say right now I live in Gurgaon,
yeah,
and a bulk of the money that I pay does not go to the Gurgaon Corporation. It goes through other channels and is routed back to the city, right? So what we need is a good overall system that is able to do all of this. And one little nugget that I'd like to leave with before Vachana can jump in is
yeah,
that it's on the money part, right? You've seen city budgets.
yeah.
10,000 crore on average for Bangalore, 30,000 crore or whereabouts. I think now it's 26,000, 25,000 for Mumbai. These are all
It's
huge numbers,
36.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, right. These are all huge numbers, but these are statements of intention. I think we are still not focusing a lot on cities generating money on their own for a separate problem, which is the capacity to spend in a lot of cases is low. In
yeah,
certain places, it's incredibly high, but in a long tail of cities, it's incredibly poor.
yeah,
So if you see the difference, what we call budget variance, right? If a city says I have planned projects for 26,000 crores to make your life better, which includes XYZ, at the end of the year or at the end of let's say 5 years, when they finally come out with their audited accounts, you will see that they barely spent 50% of what they claimed.
yeah,
So there is a very big difference between the budget and the actuals. What we need to keep an eye on is the actuals as well, and even on the actuals, the revenue collection etc. is low. So and this varies across states. So if you go to let's say a state like in Odisha, the
yeah,
principal challenge there is not that the state doesn't have money to fund its growth. The
mm,
principal challenge there is the state doesn't have the ability to be able to deploy that money effectively to drive good growth. So if you get more money, it'll just lie in some bank and on an interest, which can be used later. But that's not the principal problem. So like that, we have to sort of, I'm saying it's a little nuance. We have to sort of can't paint it in one picture. There are certain states where there is a need for more money because naturally the ecosystem allows for faster developmental work to happen. There are some where money is not the principal problem.
yeah.
But again, this is my understanding.
Yeah. So,
In all this, Puneet, I would request you to come back and tell me if I've answered your question.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think it is. It's again, it's not a straightforward cut that we are looking at. It's something that, as you rightly mentioned, that the revenue sources are also not that high, and then there is the system again is somewhere on the lines, in my understanding, that more top down. That this is how money comes in as of now. So this is how center and state are giving money, and this is the only kitty that you can generate on your own. So balancing that out is a tricky thing in its on its own.
Yeah, yeah. Vachana, sorry, you were saying something.
Sorry, Vachana.
yeah. So, yeah, I think so both financial self-sufficiency and financial accountability should go hand in hand, right? So now, whatever that Vivek just explained, I would just put it in a framework so it's just easier to communicate perhaps to your audience. So if we consider these as six pillars of municipal finance, right? One is the integrated view of city finances and integrated treasury management, which in some sense we just covered when we talked about the example of recommendation of governance, right? There is no integrated view of cities finances at all today. Second is the fiscal decentralization aspect, which is where availability of financial resources come into play. Now, we know that the eligible revenue streams for cities in India, primarily property tax. Now, even in case of property tax, what happens is the range is either fixed by government. That is, the tax rates are not essentially fixed by the city governments. And there is no, I think according to our A6 study, only 4 cities can actually borrow without prior state approval, and only 7 cities can actually invest without, invest a surplus money without state approval. So the fiscal decentralization aspect of India's cities is also pretty weak. Now, the third aspect is okay, the cities have, however limited it is, cities do have access to certain kinds of resources like property tax, sometimes SWM, cess, or etc. Right? Now, how efficiently are they able to utilize it? Is another problem. Where also here also the same aspect that Vivek just discussed above on the aspects of capacities again comes into picture.
Yeah.
Fourth aspect is a fiscal responsibility and budget management aspect, which is essentially how the accountability systems, financial management process essentially happens. Only one state in India, actually now two cities in India actually have mandated medium-term fiscal plans, which is for Guwahati and now with the latest act in BBMP, Bangalore as well. But this does not really happen, right? The quality of budgeting process is so poor. The adherence of budget timelines as per the municipal legislations often are not actually adhered. So if you look at budget variance, which Vivek also touched upon, so 1/5 of the A6 cities that we actually studied, the budget variance is actually more than 50%, right? And that's really terrible. And if you look at some of the cities like Raipur, Ranchi, it's over 70-75%. So it's the quality of budgeting system is so poor. Then the internal control mechanisms is not robust at all. There is no internal audit process mostly put in place. Next, fifth aspect is transparency and accountability. So one key aspect on how a government body should run is on these aspects, right? So the disclosure of financial and operational information out to public is not great. Although there is a public disclosure law that's passed by a lot of states as part of the JNNURM, they don't adhere with the model public disclosure law. So therefore, the cities are not transparent enough, right? And citizens do not really engage, or rather are not given the opportunity to engage in city budgeting process, where ideally they should have a say. We only have, say, like a Pune or a Bangalore or Trivandrum that does participatory budgeting, but these are not institutionalized by law, right? There is no grievance redressal mechanism. And everything that overarches all of these 5 components that we just discussed is institutional capacity. The municipal cadre rules, while it exists, are not comprehensive enough. The skill sets have not been detailed. There are no detailed job descriptions. It's not contemporary in nature. Most of the time, even the sanctioned positions are not revisited at least, on a decadal basis at least. It's far old. So all of these together actually creates, this weak financial capacities.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. It's a quite a complex topic, and dealing with each of those links becomes more and more difficult. Again, it's a cross-linking thing. It's problematic on those lines as well, that different departments will take up different things. So that again makes it more complex. But I think with the paucity of time, one of the last questions I want to come on is on lines of, there is now more and more people do agree and do see the effects of climate change in every city. And one of the things that it leads to is the amount of effect it has on marginalized people. And that is the social capital of any city, because while they are one of the people who are at the bottom of the pyramid, they are the most affected. They are the people who are helping you in every kind of way possible that you don't even realize. But with climate change, they will be the most displaced people as well. While you and I live in an apartment and can sustain a lot of things, they will not be able to do it. So how can this city system be made more resilient for those kind of future things that will come up?
Hmm. Interesting. No, that's a very valid question. I guess the one thing that jumped out at me when you were calling that out, right, is, and again, I'll take some time because I
Yeah,
think we do have another 10-15 minutes, right? So
yeah,
this will need that much because it's a very, I think, a pertinent question, that the brunt of things such as what are going on right now, which is COVID, is often borne by the most underprivileged, right? So
yeah,
and it is the duty of the state to sort of safeguard their livelihoods, their interests in so many ways, right? Now, having said that, all of that, however, is again the result of how well the governance systems are able to respond to either situations or proactively imagine the threats that are probably going to take shape in the next 5-10 years. For instance, climate change increasingly going to worsen a lot of things, right? So it depends again on how well are you set up to be able to respond, recognize and mitigate. Rehabilitate, I'm not even getting to it, because obviously that's naturally something that has to be done, right? And this is also where I'm going to take a step back and say the this is what we try to do in so many ways in A6, right?
Yeah.
The annual survey of India city systems. I would encourage all of your listeners to do, whenever you have the time, to go to the Janagra website and have a look at the report. The last report was, I think, the released in 2018 March, if I'm not wrong, and we've sort of now started giving a couple of years gap because we're doing an overhaul. Plus the fact that governance systems in India rarely change, right? They don't change on the order of 1 year. There are tiny changes that happen, and most of what we look at are policy process based changes, right?
Yeah.
So to come back to your question, how can a government do this? How can city systems be strengthened? I think, in at least in our imagination of a city system, right, it is not looking at the ability of sectors to respond. The one of the challenges that we faced as an organization is the fact that there is no shared understanding of what governance system means. So when in the same room, five people talking about a system, you could probably mean transport.
Yeah.
Somebody could mean provision of social security benefits. Somebody could mean livelihood security. Somebody could mean safety, right? In our minds, underpinning all of this is what Vachana had called out earlier. And in our mind, we like to sharply stick to that definition and say it is whatever undercuts across, which is the people, the processes, the laws, policies, the finances, the citizen participation mechanism. So unless you are able to fix that, the ability of a city to respond to either a calamity or to something that's going to happen in 10 years from now is severely limited. That's how it happens. So what you need to do, therefore, is fix these. Long answer to your short question. You have to fix the fact that the local government is a government. It's not a body. So you have to strengthen the local government itself in all the ways that Vachana had called out earlier. You have to strengthen the relationship between the state and the city in a healthy manner, not as a client patron relationship, but as a government to government relationship. You have to make sure that coordination across bodies that govern the place that is urban is robust. There is a concept of the Metropolitan Planning Committee that exists in the Constitution. That's something that nobody has, I think no state in India has really done a good job of it. I mean, granted that even in the Constitution, it was envisaged as a planning body, but there's a lot of power in sharing your plans. Look at what is happening in Delhi. The reason why the Supreme Court has made sure that the Delhi NCR region acts as a whole, even though there are different governments,
Yeah.
different cities, different states involved, and the UT.
Yeah.
The reason is because for things like climate change, it doesn't say that I will operate in the city's boundary
Yeah.
and I will not operate in the panchayat right next door, or I will operate in Delhi but not in Gurgaon. That is not how it
Yeah.
works. So how do Delhi and Gurgaon and Faridabad and the rest come together and make a joint action plan on mitigating the effects of, let's say, air pollution or some of
Yeah.
the other higher order things? Unless that mechanism is institutionalized and strengthened, the responses will be piecemeal. Somebody will buy a truck to throw water in the air when the dust is too high or when the pollution gets too high.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there is no one simple solution. You need to strengthen the hands of the local government, start seeing it as a government. You have to, and you have to do it in a manner that people start seeing them as the government. One thing that I think I forgotten to tell you is that if you ask somebody who your government is, people will rarely identify the city as their government, right?
Yeah.
सड़क कौन बनाता है, बिजली कौन देता है, या तो चीफ मिनिस्टर देता है या तो प्राइम मिनिस्टर देता है.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody knows mayor, who's the mayor, what is the mayor, what do they do, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
also this there's difference on where people place their demands for services, etc. It still goes to another layer, and therefore somebody else tries to fix it. So in that, if things stay this way, then the ability for us to present a joint face to be able to tackle these problems is somewhat limited. So I would say that short run is obviously, you put in tech, put in data, you have You have these people that come out and help the way they did during COVID. There's mass mobilization, but we cannot get around to the fact that we need to strengthen local governments. We need to improve the way people participate in their local governments. We need to make sure that coordination among at least between the state and the local government in that area is incredibly strong, institutionalized through a proper law, which,
Yeah.
chief ministers or whoever comes in and goes cannot change, and it mandates this sort of regional level view.
Yeah.
Then you'll be able to sort of look at higher order things like climate change, etc. Otherwise, it'll be a sector.
True. I agree with that.
Yeah, Vachana.
Yeah, so climate change actually is a very contemporary domain. So we have not been able to build capacities even on the existing domains to a large
Yeah.
extent. So it's going to be an extremely difficult task. And typically in India, if you look at the response to creating such institutional mechanism in some sense has been just like a response to some central government schemes, right? So there has
Yeah.
not been a deliberative attempt to create a robust institutional design. So that entire climate governance ecosystem itself at central level, state level, and city level is extremely fragmented, right?
Yeah.
And another aspect is climate governance is not even climate change, rather is not taken as a responsibility by city governments. When we were engaging on the cities 2.0, with our interactions with various city governments, that's something which we have realized, and which also shows the need for dynamic legal system, where you update, for example, the 12th schedule does not have climate change. So
Yeah.
and the third aspect which I would like to reiterate what Vivek said is the pertinence to look things at regional level angles. So these are solutions, even climate change, mobility, a pandemic, all of these require solutions at regional level. We have examples around the globe, like for example, UK is trying out something called as a combined authority model, where different city governments in a particular region is coming together, negotiating with the state that they work together in promoting better mobility, driving better economic opportunity, combating climate change, etc. So there are such examples happening. So it's high time we actually deliberate on putting down and establishing a good institutional design for all of these. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for comprehensively putting it together. So coming to the last question that we have is on the lines of what kind of jobs can then people do to help make this city system better? What kind of skills that would be required or that are required? I won't even say would be, because I think you can start it today and it is required. It's that kind of requirement that we are seeing in the ecosystem. So what do you think about that? How can that be pushed forward, and what all things are who all can enter into this ecosystem?
Vachana, why don't you go first? I've been taking the liberty of just jumping into the question. So please do.
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of colleges have started to offer urban policy, public policy courses. There are a lot of policy professionals coming into this space who are extremely passionate. So a lot of young minds coming into space, which I think is a big positive. So people who have the ability to understand urban complexities, understand urban laws, have the ability to work and negotiate with the government stakeholders are extremely important, right? And also people who have the ability to mobilize citizens. Citizens are a huge, are the huge powerhouses to create transformative change.
True.
There should be people who also have the ability to mobilize people, run campaigns. So it's a transformative change is possible, perhaps from when there are diversity. I mean, like in the sense there are there is pressure from various points. So yeah, I think these are what I can think of
Hmm.
quickly. I would request Vivek to explain
Yeah.
further.
No, I'd like to say that cities are where the action is. Cities are where the action is and is going to be for a significant amount of time. Not just for the fact that it is a highly complicated system, but also this is where both capital and talent have accumulated. Right.
Yeah.
So you will naturally have a churning and a mixing together of those. And at least what I've seen as encouraging signs in the last 5 years that I've been observing this closely is the fact that there are a lot of young people who are trying to see solving these societal challenges
Yeah.
or development challenges. Let me call it that way. A lot of young people who are trying to get into this, and this has been something that has been noticed by a bunch of universities who started offering, proper courses, etc. And I'm saying in general that is great for the, let's say, the crop of people who are now going to apply their minds to trying to fix the quality of life in cities. And in a lot of ways, most of us who've lived in cities are also invested in that right now. Having said that, I think there are few areas where we need to significantly push ahead research, not just implementation, right? Implementation, I'm fairly confident that we have enough, technocratic solutions available to try and address a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
And there are enough minds which are the sort of mind that needs to help fix a city, right, has to have the qualities of, I'm sure a lot of people will hate me for saying this, but of let's say a management consultant. I don't have a better term right now. The reason I'm calling it a management consultant, it's essentially a do whatever you need to do to try and address the problem sort of a mindset, that you're not waiting for instructions, you're not waiting for organized structures to present themselves before you're able to grasp a problem, make sense of it, and try and address that. So that's one part. However, for somebody with this sort of a mindset to drive change, what you need is a lot of research that tells that is able to shape your intervention, right? So,
Yeah.
for instance, technology is something that everybody's been trying to inject into the government.
Yeah.
But what I feel is largely missing is that the drawing the parallel between the technology and the vast number of cities which probably have very limited ability to make best use of that technology, right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying, are you doing that thing because you have a hammer? Every problem looks like a nail or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what the saying is, but something like that, right? That you say technology. So similar, I think there's a lot of research that has to go behind for what Vachana called out, which is, what is the city as a unit of governance, the city as a unit of democracy, the even research on the political parties. For instance, why do we see such a different way of operation in cities in, let's say, a Kerala or in Odisha or West Bengal and a UP?
Yeah.
I think in so many ways, the way these things functions are a reflection of the party cadre system, because a lot of them have existed before 74th CA.
Yeah.
So things existed. They wanted units at each panchayat or block level, and therefore they have a decentralized model, because you have decentralized leadership of the party cadre, but you probably don't have in some other cities which were centralized to start out with, because the parties that were governing them were centralized to start out with, right? So I think a little bit of nuanced research on city as a unit of democracy, city as a unit of economy, and the metropolitan angle. I think a lot more time and money on research has to be invested, which is thankfully being done by think tanks, academia, but I see that missing from the government.
Mhm.
So there is a little pull from the government. I think that has to change, and I think whoever wants to join sort of the bandwagon of trying to fix cities has to be cognizant of that it's going to take some time. And which brings me to the last point on the sort of individual who I think needs to invest themselves in changing the system of a city, right?
Yeah.
It takes
Years.
forever.
Yeah.
So you could be in the business of changing city systems. And let me again call out the difference between what Janagra feels is a city system versus the quality of life. This is not about saying that I'm going to give everybody in my city a piped water connection.
Yeah.
This is about saying, what law do I change? What policy do I bring in? What accounting mechanism? How do I make sure citizen participation becomes a law? So that if the city wants 100% piped water connection, they're able to do it.
Yeah.
That it doesn't become an issue because you're found wanting at those levels. That is the business we are in. So if
Yeah.
that is the sort of I'm saying, it takes a very different mind to say that I will work for 10 years but perhaps see very little change in those 10 years, because you're working behind the scenes, you're nudging somebody to do this, you sometimes spend 2 years, 3 years, 4 years advocating for a change in law, then the government changes or some COVID happens, and then it goes kaput, nothing ever happens. So
True.
you need patience, right? Something that Janagra's founder keeps calling out is, I think, is a term, urgent patience. This is not a term by the founder. I think this is both Swati and Ramesh who say this, Ramanathan. They say that you have, for you to want to change systems and you to be in the business of changing systems on cities, you need to show urgent patience, which is urgency in your actions to
Yeah.
deliver, but patience in seeing how the outcomes are generated. So yeah, I'd like to stop with that on what it takes to solve, or what a person should have in them to try and be in this business.
No, I agree with that, and it's this is the thing, right? That currently in the ecosystem, especially when you're looking at so many startups coming into it, everyone wants to be a solver, where do fast, fail fast, and things like that. But when you come to the city system of it, you need the same problem solving, but at the same slow rate of it. You can't be like you fail fast here. You just cannot do it. You have to be that kind of problem solver. You still need to be that kind of problem, but it will take years to. So you
Yeah.
need to be keep persistently pushing things forward to make it happen.
Yes, definitely. But I would put it slightly differently, Puneet, if I may,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is you do need to fail fast. But I'm saying that failing fast has to be within what your visualization of governance is.
yeah,
So if you're trying to only address right at the top quality of life challenges, right, then obviously you cannot. But within the system, you can
yeah,
pick a particular part and then do a fail fast. So it all depends on how you're able to visualize the entire system, the interconnectedness, then figure out an intervention that helps at least a range of those interconnected dots, and
yeah,
then you can fail fast. But like you said, it takes patience to even be able to visualize that. So it's not like
yeah.
you can make a plan in 1 week of how to fix, let's say, a direct beneficiary transfer in one particular district and get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I would just like to ask if I have missed out on any points that you feel are important to cover up, or you can take it up, and after that we can close this thing.
I would just like to add one point. Among the different aspects that we discussed today, one key aspect that can perhaps drive change in cities is the political economy of decentralization, right? So, something that Vivek said about how do we understand how things work differently in different contexts and
Yeah,
context essentially. So which also necessitates our engagement with the political class, which is something which we often shy away from doing,
yeah,
right? The truth is that sustainable solutions, as a solution, can probably be implemented sustainably when we engage with political class, because they are the ones who should actually drive these changes.
yeah,
So I just would like to use this opportunity to inform your audience about a forum that Janagra has actually initiated called as City Politics. It's a public discussion forum that's on Facebook and LinkedIn, where we try to actually bridge this gap between politicians, experts, civic activists, grassroots activists, and the larger citizenry, the researchers, students, etc., who are passionately and deeply interested in the space of urban.
yeah,
So where we actually hope to redefine politics as, not as a bad thing, but as good politics of garbage, water supply, etc.
yeah.
So yeah, I would like to end there. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing that. I hope that more and more audience can go on that platform and actually do that kind of good conversations and productive conversations on those lines. So yeah, I would like to thank you guys for making it such an interesting piece of conversation for me as well, because this is something that now I feel that it's very important for more and more people to understand what is city and what is the city system we are looking at, where they live. And I think I hope that we have done some amount of justice to it today, that more and more people can understand that. Thank you.
Yeah, no,
Thank
thank you for having us on the call. I think this is wonderful. What you're doing is really brilliant. One of the things that I've realized is that when I generally, I mean, I'm 6 years old into the development sector, right?
Yeah,
But when I generally speak, a lot of the initiatives and efforts are not aimed at addressing cities. They are either aimed at addressing systems or rural India. But addressing urban India is somewhat of a rarity. So thank you for having us over. I think we need as many people to listen to conversations such as this, and it's great that you're going to help amplify that, because we want more and more people to come into the cities and try and fix them. Because, like I said, remember that even to solve rural India's problem, if
yeah,
money and capacities is one big constraint, that's going to be generated in cities.
true.
So you help fix this, and the rewards, I mean, given the current system that we have
Yeah,
across the world, the reward will be reaped by everyone. So I mean, great for I really loved this conversation. Hope
yeah.
many people listen to it and enjoy the bandwagon.
I hope so too. Thank you.
You have been listening to the U20 Dialogue series. To know more, check out our website u20india.org. Do share the dialogues with your friends and colleagues. Don't forget to follow our social media handles for more information. Stay tuned for our next dialogue.